It is time now to bring in our State House insiders tonight. Dave Wilson, our Republican strategist, Antoine Sealwright, our Democratic strategist. The big story today dealing with the congressional districts in South Carolina. A couple of years ago, lawmakers redrew the district lines, a lower court ruling that they were unconstitutional. But today, the U.S. Supreme Court in a 6-3 decision says that's not the case. They basically, Judge Samuel Alito criticizing the lower court ruling for what he called a misguided approach that refused to presume lawmakers acted in good faith. Dave, a lot of Republicans came under fire for these district lines being drawn, and at the end of the day, the U.S. Supreme Court sides with state lawmakers.
Right, so keep in mind that district lines get redrawn every 10 years. So when you have a census, it takes a couple of years after that for members of the House and Senate here in South Carolina to basically go back through and redraw district lines to basically balance out as much as possible the population in each of those districts. You're talking about House and Senate, the State House, but you're also talking our 7 congressional seats. And that's the place where there have been questions coming up whether or not the African American population is getting equally represented, because there is a predominantly African American district, that being for Congressman Jim Clyburn in the 6th district, which stretches all the way from Columbia to the Battery in Charleston.
It's no secret that the congressional districts, much like the state Senate and state House lines in South Carolina, are gerrymandered. That's why you see the representation the way it is at the federal level. South Carolina has a 20+% African American population statewide, and one quote-unquote Democratic seat where most of the African Americans are compressed in. I think that says a lot about the system and how the system needs to be reconsidered. The drawing of lines and politicians picking the people instead of people picking the politicians has always been a discussion, particularly historically in the South. And there's history to back that up. And so we can't do anything about this current ruling, a 6-3 court along partisan lines. And so we expected that result to happen.
Antoine, the state NAACP issuing a statement today saying that the court, the U.S. Supreme Court, greenlit racial discrimination in South Carolina's redistricting process today, saying the black vote is not protected in South Carolina. Your take on that?
Well, we've seen the slow erosion of basic protections and basic fundamental freedoms by this right-wing activist court for some time now, and I think this is just another layer or another page in a catalog of that, and that's why elections are so pivotal at every single level, including the presidential level, in which we will have a chance to participate in November, but also the local elections where the June 11th primary dictates who draws the lines at the state house.
And that is the point that Antoine just made. Folks at home, you got to understand the vote that you took way back in 2020 about who was going to be your state house and your state Senate member. It's what's affected the way these lines got drawn in 22 and 23. JR, we say this all the time. Elections matter. Your involvement in an election matters because you're then making decisions that really flow down the chain, so to speak, and you end up with places like the 6th district being drawn the way it has, and the questions about whether or not the 1st district is drawn correctly or not.
Nancy Mace chiming in today, basically saying that race was not a factor when these lines were drawn. Well, let's move on now to Haley Trump. A very bitter campaign between the former governor and the former president coming to an end a couple of months ago, with Nikki Haley dropping out, suspending her campaign for president. And then yesterday, Dave, she does something unexpected to some. Some thought this was going to happen. She comes out and she says she now supports Donald Trump and she's going to vote for him in November.
There's a huge difference, though, JR, between I am going to vote for Donald Trump and I am endorsing Donald Trump. There's some quick math to do here real quick. If it's a 50-50 split between Biden and Trump, then think about this. 20% of Republican primary voters have voted for Nikki Haley thus far. She is continuing to get votes in primary states, and that means that basically the math works out 80% of 50% is only 40% of the vote. That's not enough for Donald Trump to win. So Nikki Haley's comment is really to look at the fact that we have got to ask Donald Trump, are you going to do what it takes to court her voters to join in supporting him in that campaign against Joe Biden?
No one should be surprised, particularly those of us who are from South Carolina, about the former governor looking out for her own interests. In Nikki Haley's world, there's no interest like self-interest. It speaks a lot about who she really is, not just from a policy perspective, but from a personality perspective, because she literally deemed all across the campaign trail that this guy was unfit to be president, but now he is certainly fit for her vote. That old adage that leopards do not change their spots, zebras do not change their stripes, and that old political adage that Republicans fall in line and Democrats fall in love is playing out in real time. Just because Nikki Haley endorsed does not mean every single person who voted against Donald Trump in the primary is going to follow her lead. But it does send a strong message, I think, to my party about the need to unify and calcify around our nominee, because this is shaping up to be a very base-heavy election. And we all know the Trump MAGA extremist base is very loyal.
Dave, is she gunning for the vice president's job here?
I don't necessarily think that she has the running for that right now. There are other people who are on that list right now, and as volatile as their relationship had been, Nikki Haley and Donald Trump, I don't necessarily see that he is going to see her level of loyalty that he will be expecting to be showing up with her name on a VP list, but do expect to see her name on lists in 2028 and 2032.
All right. Dave, Antoine, guys, as usual, thank you so very much for your time. As always, you can find more information on the stories we've talked about tonight by simply going to our website. That's WLTX.com. Stay